Okay, episode number 40.
Wow.
Creative Love Radio, I know.
Magic number.
So this is a really cool episode because we're going to talk about the Father Archetype. We talked about the Mother Archetype on our last call. We're going to talk about the Father Archetype and how this archetype influences your success. So stay tuned. You are listening to Creative Love Radio with Debbie and Dr. Rob, founders of the Academy of Jungian Spiritual Psychology, helping highly educated, visionary women discover their purpose, launch or grow their business, improve relationships, and get back to optimal health through a creative mind process based on Jungian psychology and Eastern wisdom. We don't help you just cope with your life. We help you create a life that fuels your soul. We invite you to get the tools to master your mind, discover your true self, and create an extraordinary life. This is the journey you are meant to be on. For more information, visit us at our website at debbieanddrrob.com. Now let's get started. Episode number 40, the big 40, Rob.
The big 40, it's our...
We're all growing up now. We're
party.
Actually a real podcast now.
That's right. And we have a great topic to top it off, the Father Archetype. And it's something that a lot of people have asked us about. Last time we talked about the Mother Archetype. So, of course, the father got jealous and said,
What about me?
What about me? But I think maybe a little review is in order just to get everybody on the same page.
That sounds great, Professor Rob.
The archetypes, there's a lot of misunderstanding. Primarily because they're used now in a lot of different fields in a lot of different ways, the term. But in Jungian psychology, technically, you cannot see an archetype. What you see are symbols that represent the archetype.
So a lot of people say, like, these are certain archetypes that, and then they're the warrior and the princess and the archetype of the villain, and so those are really more personality types.
Yeah, and they're describing character traits and
more persona
roles, personas, those kind of things. Nothing wrong with that, but the way we define it is definitely a psychological structure that's in the unconscious mind, meaning you're already born with it. You don't have to create it. And, we all have it. As soon as you start exploring your mind, your deeper unconscious mind, you run into these archetypes.
And so we talked about the Mother Archetype, and it's a universal idea that everyone has a mother. Even children, and even children do have mothers, even animals. And then if you think about even nature has a mother, Mother Earth, and there's basically some kind of sexual intercourse that happens with plants and bees and all of nature. So it's not just limited to human beings. And so then we also have to have a father, the masculine and feminine, and so it's universal that people have fathers. So you have to have the male seed to create life with the female womb. Yeah. So it's both together. The fertilization of the egg in all areas.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
Reproduction
lesson, the birds and the bees. Well, I think it's really important because it is a metaphor for how we work with the Father Archetype.
Absolutely. But we all have to deal with this, our personal mother and father. But that's not what we're talking about when we're talking about the archetypes. Now, they do play a role. So that's where a lot of people get confused. In Jungian psychology, you divide the unconscious into two parts. One is the personal unconscious. So that's where your personal experience of your mother and father would be. But then the deeper collective unconscious, what we call the creative unconscious, is where the archetypes would be. And so when we think about our mother personally, our our memory and our impression that we got from her would be in our personal unconscious, but then the collective aspect of it, the archetypal aspect of the Mother Archetype, would be in the collective unconscious, and that's where it turns into Mother Earth. The images, the symbols of the Virgin and
nurture,
the goddess that you see all over the world. So with the Father Archetype, the same principle applies. In your personal unconscious, you would have those memories and impressions that you received from your biological father. And
even stepfather or someone who raised you as a father figure.
Yeah.
Like if it's a grandfather.
And all cultures have the idea of a father. And so even if your father was absent, you got an imprint of what the Father Archetype is or what the father personally should be doing. Then in the deeper collective unconscious, you get the Father Archetype. Now, so what does Jung say about this? He says the father, because if you think of the mother as Mother Earth, the father represents the spirit. So you see in the Judeo-tradition, Judeo-Christian tradition of the Father, God, the Sky Father, the Sky God who kind of oversees, moves things, and brings life, and on and on. You develop that whole concept of it.
And then even in, I guess, the Renaissance area, the king is often referred as the father of the land. He represents. He's like the Father Archetype of the land, of leading the people.
Yes, and for individuation, meaning the process of us growing up and becoming our bigger selves as opposed to our small ego self, which happens, Jung says that it would happen around midlife, but what we've seen now is people grow up a lot faster. There's a lot more stuff going on.
We have people in their 20s doing this work now.
Yeah, because it's just kind of a different world now. People mature faster in a lot of ways.
And for those of you who don't know what individuation is, when we introduce terms, it's really becoming an individual away from our conditioning from our early life. So it's about basically making a conscious choice of where you want to take yourself, becoming an adult in the world versus being the child of your parents and repeating those patterns. You can actually grow outside of that. You can grow outside of those old patterns. And that's what's great about Jung's work is that we're not trying to make our old patterns better and rewiring them and repatterning them. We're actually stepping outside of them completely and making a fresh start in a fresh new way, our true self. So let's go back to the Father Archetype. And so the Father is the spirit. And so we think about just our personal history. When I think about my father, he was very strict. I had to work really hard to earn his love. I felt like I had to work, just obey very well. Like it wasn't there for me in my perception. It was more, I had to work hard. And then I got punished if I did anything wrong. And when I was raised Catholic, so it was similar ideas that God was this punishing God. You have to follow the rules. You can't have sins. You're going to go to hell. And so I was very obedient to the Spirit, but I never felt that the Spirit, like God really loved me. It was, or I think He did, but it was more like, as long as I'm good, He'll love me. And that's kind of how I saw the Spirit. And I think a lot of people have that same pattern, is they project a lot of the Father Archetype, the way they relate to their father becomes how they see God and their spiritual life. They start to see that pattern. So if you have to, and so for success for me was, I had to feel like I had to work really hard. I had to follow the rules, and I couldn't speak up. And that's how success happened for me, or that's how I maintained just enough with work. And it was all about just following the rules, staying in tow, not really believing my imagination had anything to do with anything. I had these big dreams as a child, and growing up I wanted to write books and do things, but the way my conditioning about the Father and Spirit was, you just got to work hard, you just got to do the job. And so I ended up not really living my dreams because of that, until I started exploring other spiritual beliefs outside of the religion, and even understanding Christianity in a different way than how I was taught, or how the limited way I was taught. So it was really interesting to see that transformation happen. And a lot of the success I think I have today, I know I have today, is because I transformed the way I looked at the Father Archetype.
Yeah, that would be a good way to understand it. Simply that if we are unconscious, that is, if we just let it roll and not do any self-exploration, the imprint that we get from our personal father, or the images that we get from the culture about what a father is, will essentially determine what your spiritual viewpoint of life will be. Because you'll be unconscious about it, and it'll be just projected onto the spiritual world, just as the Mother Archetype is projected onto nature in the physical world. The Father Archetype would be projected onto the spiritual life. So a lot of people say, I don't have a faith. I don't believe in anything that I don't see. Meaning they never really went deeper than the personal experience of their father. And often, our parents, a lot of them, they weren't very religious. They weren't really taught in the mystical traditions or the meaning of the theology. So,
or they were really religious and you rebelled against it.
Yes, that's true too. But they were often, the religion that was handed down was dogmatic, meaning it was a set of rules instead of a real spiritual understanding of what a spiritual life was.
And it wasn't creative. It was very black and white, and do this, and if you're a good person, you're going to get a good reward, and you can't break the rules or you're going to get punished. And so if you have that type of attitude, so those of you who are looking to create a business or to have more success in their life, if you were raised that way, you may believe your relationship with the spirit or the consciousness and creation is about, if I do it right, I won't get punished. And then I see a lot of people say, I have this dream, I have this vision, but God has his will too. And when they're not succeeding, they think, well, God doesn't want me to have that success. And it's almost like I think that's a personal history, more of a father influence, a personal father influence of you weren't allowed to have everything you wanted as a kid. Dad didn't give you everything you needed. And so when we think about creating our life, we often, I hear so many people say, well, God doesn't want me to be successful. So it's, I'm powerless to that. And so that's the relationship, is that God is deciding for us what is right or wrong. And I think it's a collaboration. And I believe that if you have a desire for something, that desire comes from God. It comes from God. So your ego is the one who's making the story up that you're not supposed to have it. And so I want to be clear, the more we understand our own personal history with our Father and the patterns that show up in our life reflecting that, when we relate to spirit, when we relate to the unseen, then we'll be able to make some changes in our life and really understand how we can create. One thing I want to mention is when we think about the unseen is really the spirit, is the things that we can't see. The material Mother Archetype is all the material world, the physical things that we can touch and feel and have, and our senses pick up. But the spirit is all the things that come from imagination, creativity, seeing things and having faith in something that you can't see. And so you need both to create. You need the material and the physical world. But the spirit is also having a healthy relationship with the Father Archetype, will help you create more and have faith in what you want to create instead of just having this limited idea of you can only have a certain amount and you only deserve a certain amount.
Yeah. Yeah. And if people don't have that awareness, they'll project that onto money or kind of status. Those kind of trappings, of course, there's nothing wrong with them. The only problem, they become a problem when people project a lot of their pent up spirituality onto those things. They believe that those things will make me happy and they'll be a substitute for my spiritual life. And that's a mistake. They will not satisfy that craving. That's a real connection to the spirit.
Like you were saying that we were having a discussion earlier, and you were saying that women, and I see this a lot too, that women a lot of times are getting their information about what the masculine energy is by looking at unconscious men. The men in their life, their parents, the men in the corporate world, and they're trying to match that masculine energy based on what they think that's what makes them success. Oh, that's a success. Okay, I have to be that. I have to be low, be emotional. I have to be very rational. I have to not, have feelings or compassion. I have to be hard-nosed. I have to be driven. I have to work really hard. And so basically you're copying a false copy or a limited copy of what the true connection to the masculine is.
Yes, definitely really important to understand the father archetype in relationship to the animus, what Jung called the animus. For women, the individuation process is very much becoming conscious of this animus in them, meaning the spirit, meaning the logos male principle in their psyche. And especially now, because women are going out and becoming successful and starting their own businesses, this understanding is really crucial if they really want to be conscious of their own process. Because otherwise, they will be, like you say, imitating simply men who are themselves unconscious.
I know. It's like the bad copy.
The blind leading the blind.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that feeling, that this misunderstanding that you have to work really hard and take a lot of action to get results, which for a woman, if we can connect with the spirit, it's that unseen that will deliver the whatever we need. And the mother, then with the physical, with the mother, is how we nurture and formulate the material or the opportunities that come along. So I see a lot of women that are successful doing really well with collaborating with other women, because now they have the spirit supporting them, and then women know how to make things happen and help each other and work together and collaborate and take what's material and seen and make it really amazing. And so we do, as women, have an opportunity to become really successful without working so much and pounding the pavement like men are doing it the hard way. I even noticed too, in the internet marketing industry, the men are just spend a lot of money, spend $100,000 and then you're going to make $1 million. There's no fine tuning and finessing of targeting. They're just throw a lot of money at something and then the numbers will just work itself out. Where I think women are more creative and they can do more. And so if we just follow what they're saying, we're going to just be caught up in the rat race as well. And I work with a lot of women that are tired of the way the men are teaching them how to do business. And I think we're ready to have a new way of working that's less effort, more action, but less effort. And there are two different things. And when you're aligned with the Father Archetype and the spirit and the animus within you, things will come to you much easier. You'll even feel better because you'll feel as though spirit has your back. If you aren't conscious of the Father Archetype, you're projecting your father, human father, onto God and the spirit. you're going to feel as though it's harder work, or you're going to doubt that faith, that spirit is there for you.
Yeah. So here's a question for you then. What would a individuated woman look like? That is, a woman that's in touch with the Father Archetype and has kind of integrated or metabolized and thought about this archetype in her life.
Well, I think that being aware that spirit is unlimited, that you are a part of that, that's a part of you, and having faith in that idea and being able to take more risks. And I think when I was younger and I didn't understand the Father Archetype and understand my relationship with spirit, I really didn't take many risks. It was very scary. I did everything predictably. And when I really started becoming aware of the incredible connection that is available to everyone, to this unlimited self, it was easier to take risks because I felt like the spirit would always have my back. That idea that when you step out and there's nothing to step onto, and you take that leap of faith, that the ground rises to meet you. And I know that the reason why I've gotten so many things that I've always wanted is because I had that faith to step out and trusting that the Great Father to bring me the resources I need. And it's changed my relationship with money, to take risks financially that you have no idea. That all the evidence says there is no way this is not a wise choice, but that you take that risk and that it pays off big time. So it takes a little, do little steps, but you can really get to the point where you're taking really big risks and having really big rewards. The higher the risk, the higher the reward. And you get to stretch your life. And I feel that I live with less fear. I feel like I can be more creative and believing in the impossible. It's really amazing. It's just something that every woman should have, is this access to their individuated self and access to all the power that she possesses.
That's cool. Yeah, and so this spirituality doesn't necessarily involve any particular beliefs, but it's more of an internal psychological transformation that happens that reconnects you to the Father Archetype. Yeah,
and you have to really understand and have faith that what the higher knowledge is, that what's your philosophy, what's your worldview? Do you believe in just a material world that all you can see, that all that's there is what you see? Or do you believe that there's a spiritual element to the world that is mysterious and wonderful and magical that can create things that we can't see? And are we a part of that? Do we have to earn it? Or do we automatically come into the world possessing it?
Yeah.
And that's really the question to ask yourself, is what is your relationship with the spirit, God, higher power? And how does that relate to your personal relationship with your Father? What are the parallels there? And when you start to just become aware of it, you can start to change it. And yeah, it's we could talk about this forever. Great topic. And if you're interested in learning more, we are doing some spiritual retreats this year. If you're interested, just sign up on our website. There's some information to get a free consultation about that. And we are just really excited to share this info because I haven't heard this anywhere else. And we're always trying to bring things that fresh and new that really can inspire you.
Yeah, and it makes sense because it's so practical as well as for everyone, but especially women as they're entering the workforce and as they're creating businesses. This kind of information is really helpful to them in being balanced in their creation, instead of just imitating men who often we've got it wrong, and trying to be a better version of us. it's really connecting with your own creativity through the internal process.
And then also one last thing is that, and this is a question or my assumption, but I'm going to ask you just a random question. If we don't work with the father archetype, if we don't make it conscious, do we tend to project our personal father onto our mates as women?
Absolutely.
That we end up putting them on the pedestal because our father was the power, usually in the family, or more powerful than us as a child. That if we don't individuate, we tend to go into relationships feeling submissive or not feeling like an equal partner.
Yeah, it depends.
Or competitive, like that personal history is kind of influencing all your relationships with men, even men at work and your bosses and all those.
Right, but it would depend on whether you identify with the father's persona or you reject the father's persona. Mm-hmm. And sometimes even you identify with some aspects of the father's personality and reject other parts. So those elements then would be projected onto your mate and the bosses and the coworkers and all those things. And in general, it would determine the way you see your spiritual life.
Yes.
And so you're leaving it up to basically chance, the interpretations of your 5-year-old self made as you were growing up about who the father was, and then living by those assumptions. Whereas as you become conscious, you're able to cultivate and grow it in a more mature way.
So look at your relationship with your father. How does that relate to your belief in spirit and how you relate to higher power? But also think about money too. The money is not seen. You really can't see money. I mean, you have dollar bills, but money is more of an idea. It's a logical idea. And what we do with money is with the material world is more the mother archetype. But the money itself coming in, if you're having cash flow issues, if you're having, feeling like you're hitting that glass ceiling and you're not reaching the next level, not getting that promotion, it probably is related to the father archetype. And so, yeah, great topic today. Thank you for letting me talk about this.
My pleasure.
And we'll see you on our wonderful Facebook group, Creative Love Community, and we're going to bring more topics, more than just love. We're going to talk about success and building businesses and exploring spirituality and health. So stay tuned for more great episodes.
That's right. See you soon.
Take care, everyone. Bye. You've just listened to Creative Love Radio. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you soon on our next episode. Don't forget to subscribe to us on iTunes so you can get every episode, and visit us on our website at debbieanddrrob.com.